I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods 9 to the Sky. Now, last episode, we set up some crazy automation for this energizing orb that you see behind me, which allows us to make all the modium. And now that we have all the modium, this means we can craft up some pretty nice tools and gear. But before I dive into all of that and the tool making and gear making, we should probably get something else up and running that's going to take a little bit of time to start processing. And that, my friends, is going to lead us into industrial foregoing. And this mod is definitely up there on my list of favorite mods of all time. And I will try my best to show you the fastest way to get started with this mod. And this one, as most mods do, has a kind of early game progression that you have to get through in order to really unlock the potential of the mod. So, industrial foregoing, to really get started with it, you just need to craft yourself up some fluid extractors. And now the reason I preface those pitiful machine frames is because this mod's progression is really based around the upgrading of those machine frames. Now, I'm going to be utilizing 16 of these fluid extractors, and you don't have to utilize this many if you don't want to, but what I want to do is I want to use this one for making some starter plastic, which we'll eventually be able to make some seeds for. But the real thing that I want to have this set up for is just to make latex, which is going to be the first sort of material that we're going to need to craft a lot of things in industrial foregoing. Now, the idea around these extractors is we are going to use some sort of log. Now, acacia logs are going to be one of the best logs to use in this particular setup. And you can actually see that if I go ahead and grab some of these, you can look at the uses for the acacia log. And if you scroll through, you'll see a fluid extractor here, and you'll notice this one right here says 4 millibuckets. If we click this, you'll see that that is one of the best materials to utilize in this setup. So what I want to do is I want to have some fluid extractors that are facing into the wall here, and then I'm going to have this sort of setup right here where the log is being placed in. Now, this is going to start working on them immediately, which means we're going to need to eventually replace this log. And that's where we need to basically place in logs in this case. So I'm going to have a stack of these machines that look very much like this, that are going to be stacked 4 high. This is going to utilize 8 of those machines, right? And I'm just going to, in the back, have some modular routers that are going to be sending or placing these logs in place here. Now, when setting up these modular routers for placing, there's a couple of things that we're going to have to note. So right now I have the back as the side that I'm going to have this send from, and that would be nice if that all in well worked. Like if I place this in and we just send it, we notice that it doesn't actually send the log out. And that's because there's actually some configs that we have to change in order to allow machines such as this to act like a fake player and to work in the world. Now, one way we can get around this whole fake player issue is by using a security upgrade. And if you put this inside, it will allow this to work, which is all good. But there is another way, which basically will allow us to not need to have a security upgrade in there. The security upgrade basically makes the machine act as me and not a fake player. So the way that we can do this is we need to go into our team settings. Up in the top right, we can click the settings button. And then in here, you will find a fake players allow. So allow all fake players, and you set this to true and accept. And now you will notice this is able to place. And you're going to notice a lot of machines are going to give you this sort of problem. So as long as you change that setting, you should be good. And this goes for a lot of newer mod packs nowadays. Now that that's all settled, these machines will work faster if you give them power, but they do work without power. So that's just something to note. If you give them power though, they're going to work about 3 times faster than they were if they weren't powered. And so these machines are now producing a bit of latex, which is fantastic and exactly what I need to really get started in this mod. So now that this is starting to produce some fluids, we have now latex in here. I need to start getting it out. So I'm going to utilize the universal pipes because I like the way they look and they fit our color scheme. And I'm going to run that down here, and it's going to connect into the bottom of this jumbo tank, which is my tank of choice in this particular case. Because these jumbo tanks are super, super nice, by the way. They're not only pretty, where you could see the fluid in them very, very clearly, but they also store quite a bit for such a cheap thing to make. And with our connectors all connected up, there we go. We can see we now have 16 buckets of latex already ready to go. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and start processing up some of this latex. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use a latex processing unit. I'm going to use a sink to send water to this processing unit. And we just need to access the configs here, One being the water, we'll say pull from the back. And it's really nice. These machines have the config to allow you to push and pull. And then for the latex, we'll just say pull from the bottom. So it's going to start to pull this in, and then we just need to add a gate on here to give this some power to start working. And what this is going to do is going to start producing little plastic pellets. Now, I'm not going to utilize this for very long. I just need to run this long enough to be able to get some latex seeds. Well, they're not called latex seeds in this. They're actually called rubber seeds. And they have multiple uses, but one of the primary ones is to be able to produce this plastic. So now we have some dry rubber. We just have to smelt it and we'll get our plastic, which should allow us, I think, to make some seeds. Oh, interesting. You actually just make the regular dry rubber. So we just need the dry rubber itself in order to make the rubber seeds. And then we can use the seeds to produce these dry rubber, and which we can then smelt. So perfect. I already have enough to make the seeds. And there we go. Oh man, that is going to be very, very helpful in this whole process with industrial foregoing. So now for the fun part of actually crafting with this mod. And this is going to allow us to dive into a few new things that we haven't touched yet with applied energistics. And that is going to be fluid crafting and the use of fluids within an applied energistics system. And I have a really easy solution for this without even needing to make fluid disks. And that's to simply just attach a storage bus directly onto your tank, much like this. And just make sure that you set your priority here, or partition, and make sure you have your partition set in case this tank was to run fully dry. And then just make sure that everything is ready to go. We shouldn't have to worry about priorities or anything like that at the moment. And this should give us access now to this tank from within our storage. So let's see. Can I now see the latex in the storage? I should. Yep, there it is. So there's the latex. Now, something cool about utilizing fluids inside of applied energistics is if you were to craft, for example, a bucket of latex inside of your crafting grid, it would pull from that storage and be able to fill that bucket, which is fantastic. That's one little thing to note that refined storage can't actually do. So in this case, if I grab a bucket, let's go ahead and craft one real quick and grab the latex, I can go ahead and simply click on this and it allows me to pull a bucket directly out. So just a nifty little thing that you can do. But we're also going to utilize this in our actual auto crafting, and we can have items sent and also fluids sent at the same time from a pattern provider. So let's go ahead and get that done. So I'm going to place a pattern provider on my dissolution chamber. This little nifty machine right here is basically how everything is crafted from within industrial foregoing. Everything from our upgrades all the way to all of our machine frames. And the way that we want to automate this is we want to make sure we block our recipes where we only send one set at a time. So in the dissolution chamber, I should be able to set all of these individual things to the top. So fluid input definitely going to be set to pull, making sure that allows access in the top. And then we also want the input of our items to also be set to pull on the top. And then our output, we want it to push to the top as well, because we want this whole thing to loop and send all of the stuff just back in to the storage. Now, fluid output, I'm going to leave that blank for right now. There's only a few recipes that actually give a fluid output, typically water. And so I'm not going to worry about that as of right now. So let's go ahead and get our first actual craft ready to go now that we've got the machine configured. And that is going to be for the machine frame, which is going to be this simple machine frame. So notice this requires latex. It requires all of these other materials as well. If I set up the AutoCraft, it's actually going to pull in the latex that we need in order to perform this operation. And we should be able to just set that pattern as is and place it inside here, and all should work. So if all of my other crafting recipes are ready to go, I should be able to now simply craft this frame. So let's go ahead and craft one. And this should send all of the ingredients and the latex into the system, as you see right there. I did also set this to blocking mode, but I don't think that is necessary. It is only going to still be ever allowed to send the first ingredient set because of the way this machine works. But there we go. So there's our simple machine frame, all crafted up and ready to go. That is pretty cool. So with that done, remember how earlier I said this mod has an entire progression built around this crafter? Well, now we're going to be moving into the next thing. So within industrial, there's a couple of other machine frames. One is the Advanced and the next one is the Supreme. Now, the Advanced we can definitely do today. This one is going to be pretty straightforward. We just need pink slime. Now, the other one is a little bit different. This one requires ether gas, which requires this wither setup that they demonstrate right here. And yes, this is a little bit more in depth in making it. So let's go ahead and just simply worry about getting that pink slime. Now, the pink slime, to be able to do this, you're going to need a mob slaughter factory. So all of these individual components are going to need to be crafted up for us to be able to get started with this. So the slaughter factory doesn't actually kill the mobs, even though it may seem, well, it does kill them, but it doesn't actually give you the mob drops. So it basically just chops them up into mush, and then we use that mush in crafting. And you know, it's usually better if you just don't think about it, because you do get a bonus on the output of pink slime if you use passive mobs. So all we have to do is just add this to our farm right here, and this should just start generating pink slime. It's also going to start generating liquid meat. Now, this machine is also going to need a range upgrade. So this is another thing that's made in the dissolution chamber. I'm just going to make this this 2 or size 2. They kind of scale up by going, the 1 is going to be a 3x3. The 2 is going to be a 5x5. It really doesn't make that very clear, but that is how it's going to work, expanding from the outside of the machine. So I should be able to make this pattern or add this pattern in here. And now we can just go ahead and request 1. It's going to craft the same way as the other materials. And this is why having that fluid crafting is just so nice. Now all I should need to do is place the machine in just like so. And I'm going to place a tank on the left and right side of it. We're going to play with these tanks here in a second. But I just need to put this range upgrade, and we can click this show area button to see the actual working area. And you can see it is plenty of space and should allow us to start harvesting these mobs. So I just need to give it some power, and this should start generating 2 different types of fluids every time it finishes this operation, given that there's a mob in here for it to take down. And you can see it's going to already start to work on that. And thankfully, there's these nice little convenient buttons right here. For example, this is the meat, and we can go ahead and say, push that to the left side, and the pink slime, we can say, push that to the right side, evenly distributing this just like so. And now this is where things are going to get interesting, because I want to send this fluid over here, and I want to do it wirelessly, so that way I can tap in and visualize all of our different fluids set up in here. And one of the interesting ways we can do that is by utilizing a mod called Entangled. And this allows us to entangle a block and utilize that block in a different location. So all I have to do here is use my entangled binder, and I just need to shift right click on the block that I want to entangle. And then, for example, down here, since I want to pipe to this, I'm going to go ahead and place my entangled block right here, and then right click this. And now that tank is technically right here as well. So this should allow me to then use a pipe to pipe the fluids out of that entangled block and directly into this jumbo tank. I know it's kind of ridiculous, but it is fantastic and allows us to do things, especially if we have builds like this, where we want to keep things nice looking. And I don't want to have to, break the bottom here open to add a pipe or something like that. And now I can just simply add a bus, and remember to go ahead and set your partition just to make sure that if this tank was, like I said, to empty, it doesn't fill up with some random fluid later on down the road. And with that, we now have access to pink slime for our crafts. And now to make all of these machines run much, much faster, all we have to start working on now is setting up autocrafts for the speed tier 2s, the efficiency tier 2s, and the processing tier 2s. These just simply need to be set up to automated. It's super simple from that point forward. And I would recommend, if you're definitely this far in a pack like I'm at, don't even worry about making these base tier efficiency ones, as they're not part of a tiered sort of system. You can go straight to the tier 2. Now, these speed upgrades make this dissolution chamber much quicker, but it also will make other machines much faster. For example, this one right here, this will start taking out these mobs much, much faster, generating way more pink slime than we were making earlier. And that's just going to lead us into making these better frames as we continue on, gaining access to a ton of new machines that are going to be very powerful. Industrial Foregoing has some pretty ridiculous machines. Now, if we're to jump back into the Getting Started 2 chapter, which we're almost through, I would say, and would have been through a long time ago, it wants us to make a few interesting things. One, a marine fisher, which I 100% agree this is a fantastic thing to make, and if you haven't already gotten ink sacks, this is a great way to get ink sacks and also a bunch of other stuff. Mostly enchanted books. You get a ton of enchanted books from this thing. But we've already completed most of the other stuff in this progression line, which in my opinion is kind of all out of order. But we're ultimately going to lead to an ore laser base, which will allow us to start mining ores in this sort of configuration, which is pretty ridiculous. And so I guess we might as well get those things out of the way. For example, a marine fisher, very easy machine to make. I don't have a place to put it just yet because I really want to place it inside of an ocean biome, which we are going to get set up eventually when we dive back into ours. But the marine fisher, definitely done. And so now that quest should be knocked off the list. And now we just need to do the other one, which is going to be the lasers. Now, if we're going to go ahead and get into lasers anyways, I might as well get the wither set up. And so instead of me running and utilizing the setup for gaining ores, I want to use the one that allows us to get into the highest tier machines, and that is going to be able to farm the ether gas. So we might as well go ahead and complete the rest of our quests. All we need is a laser drill, and there we go. It says it is now time, which gives us the ability to get started. We get an epic reward. Ooh, I don't know what enchanted book we got, but we get an epic reward. Oh, an efficiency 3. How epic. But what this allows us to do now is see the recipe for the All-the-Modium star. Ooh, I cannot wait to get into this. We are getting very, very close. But anyways, with that all said, we've got a lot of quests that are now working their way through. This now gives us the ability with our laser drills and with a fluid laser base to start farming the wither of, well, you could say it's farts. I mean, ether gas. Yeah, that's exactly what it means. Now, to be able to get the ether gas back here, which I'm going to be setting this up in the end, by the way, I'm going to need to utilize these. These are going to be ender tanks, and depending on what gets changed in the future, most of the ender tank mods work very similar. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, shift right click to change the colors, so that way these are both the same. Now, this particular mod, you can expand the storage of the tank with Eyes of Ender, but I'm not really worried about that at the moment. We don't really have to expand this tank or anything like that, and nor do we have to expand its pump rate. We just simply need to get it linked up and to start getting this wither set up in the other dimension. Now, something to note with this setup, we are going after ether gas. Like I mentioned, we do need a purple lens for this to work, and it will work in any biome. I just want to set it up in the end because I've had issues with this in the past. When it comes to loading into your world, sometimes some power may dip, and the thing that's keeping your wither from destroying everything, the stasis chamber, might not necessarily hold its own. So it's just better safe than sorry. So let's go ahead and set this bad boy up. So all we're going to need is a stasis chamber. I'm going to power said stasis chamber with a flux point just to make sure that it is always receiving a good amount of power. I could use gates, but in this case, if we ever change that system, I don't want to have to worry about it. So I'm just going to set that to main. That should be fine, and it doesn't utilize a whole lot of power. But the bounding box area you can see is 3 blocks tall. And this is actually how high we need to build this thing to place in our fluid base. So I'm going to go ahead and place in my soul sand and count 1, 2, 3. And then up here on the 3rd block is where I'm going to place in my fluid laser base. And this is going to be directly above the wither whenever we go ahead and craft that guy in. So I'm going to place these laser drills a few blocks away. I'm going to place them at least with 1 block spacing, and for good reason. I just want to be able to access this machine. You could, however, place this in a ton of different configurations, as you've seen from those images inside of the quest book. But for right now, let's go ahead and get these placed in like so. And we're already almost ready to summon in that wither. We just need to get these laser drills some power, and we also want to put our ender tank on top of here. And then we'll configure this machine right here, the output, to push the ether gas into our ender tank. So I'm now almost ready to go with this bad boy. But something that I definitely want to mention is making sure, I guess I should have mentioned this before, but make sure you're within a single chunk. That way you can claim this and also force load it. You're going to need this to be loaded. Otherwise, it's not going to generate if we're in another dimension. So you can do that by holding down Shift whenever you click in that menu. I'm going to go ahead and add the upgrades into these machines, and then I can go ahead and get my power placed in. And this is going to make these machines run a bit faster. Now, this machine only accepts an efficiency in processing. So it's another thing to notice, but it doesn't actually need power. The only thing it needs power are the lasers themselves. Now, I am still missing one other thing, and that is that laser lens. So if I head back home and I go to laser lens, I have a white lens here, but I need to turn it purple. And I do have some purple dye, so I can go ahead and I can just dye that directly purple just to make sure. We go to the fluid laser, and ether gas, okay, is the one we're going to get. So back to the end islands, and we should be ready to go just by placing this in here. Now it's looking for the wither, but the wither is not here right now. So I guess we might as well spawn in the wither. And we can do it a couple of different ways. We can spawn it in like normal, which is probably how I'm going to do it, just to make sure we see what it looks like. But what the stasis chamber should do is hold this guy in place before the explosion technically will happen. And at this moment, this guy is frozen and stuck forever in this state. And we are now farming ether gas. Slowly but surely, it should be going into this ender tank. You can see it starting to build up. And we can now start to fill our other tank with ether gas back at the base. And then it's just a matter of placing in my inner tank and getting this bad boy hooked up. So just like that, we now have ether gas placed in my storage bus and make sure to partition just like all of the other ones. And now we can use ether gas as a fluid in our autocrafts. And so with that ether gas, this gives us access to the highest tier machine frame from Industrial Forgoing, which is going to be amazing. This gives us access to a ton of powerful storage options, especially when it comes to fluids and even items. But there's also some very nice machines that we also gain access to, and also the ability to make a generator that can produce 25 million FE per tick. So I guess now all we have left to do is to at least craft this so it fulfills our quests. And there it is. Boop. And now we have ourselves a supreme machine frame. This thing is beautiful. And now something to mention, if you didn't actually know, there is a black hole controller. So if you make a bunch of these black hole tanks and storages, you can actually access them all from one place, being that black hole controller. So it's kind of like its own sort of storage drawer mod. And so now with Industrial Forgoing set up, I'm starting to feel a lot more comfortable. Now that we have all of these machines sort of set up, we can really start to expand our infrastructure and make some really nice machines. Now, I did mention at the beginning of the episode, I wanted to get all the Modium gear, and so let's go ahead and get that done. Now for this, we're going to need several smithing templates. So yeah, looping this over a few times is going to build up and duplicate our smithing templates. Now, if you happen to miss the episode where I showed how to get those smithing templates, it is technically done through occultism, the way that I showed in that video, but they did recently add the bastion structures inside of the nether. So you now can locate those bastions and also loot them, and well, you can gain access to them from that way as well. Now, before I start upgrading into the armor, I want to remove the Berserker's Fury off of this gear, and you can do that with a prismatic cobweb. Just by tossing it in here, it's going to remove the curses off of gear, which is a really nice thing that Apotheosis adds, allowing you to customize your gear without the fear of repercussions. Now, I believe when it comes to making the actual tools themselves that utilize all the Modium, it is cheaper to make the tools than it is to upgrade your netherite tools. But if you already have enchantments and stuff, you might want to do it this way. But this does cost significantly more all the Modium in order to upgrade it this way. And so now after making a couple of smithing templates, I should be good, and we should be able to start working on this. Like making these plates, maybe it's not cheaper, it might almost be the exact same I guess that we could do. I have no idea at this point. Yeah, that also seems kind of expensive, but I guess now is the moment of truth. So I've gotten all of the individual pieces ready to go, so we can craft ourselves a hoe, a shovel, an axe, and these will be upgraded as we continue on, and all the Modium pick, and also all the Modium sword, which I'm going to be doing inside of my smithing setup here. So we do need an all the Modium ingot in order to do the smith. So we also need the template with that, and then we can upgrade our sword, and this will carry over our enchantments. But notice all of these tools are now indestructible as we move them into the Allthemodium version. And same goes for our gear. So this is as simple as placing in our template, putting in our material, and just upgrading everything over. Oh my goodness. Here we go. We're jumping through the progression of insane gear and insane tools. Oh boy. Yep. It's the progression. We're playing in all the mods pack. And here we go. So let's actually see what this looks like. It is a pretty interesting looking armor set. Very, very cool and very orange, which I really like. I know it's yellow, but it's definitely very orange, and I'm down. It fits the theme. And so with that, and us also getting into industrial foregoing, this has unlocked the ability for us to enchant things and also unenchant things and take those enchantments and store them and all kinds of other fun stuff. So definitely a mod worth getting into, especially now that we have this gear. So enchanting, definitely in our future, and apotheosis is going to be in our future as well. So guys, if you did enjoy today's episode, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give this video a huge thumbs up. Of course, it's now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks is going to go out to Forever. I think that's how I'm supposed to say it. Thank you so much, by the way, for your amazing support by choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting guys in one of the best ways possible. Thank you so very much, and I look forward to seeing you, of course, guys, in the next episode. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye!